I have tried since 1987, working with the highest level officials of the Palestinian movement, including Chairman Yasser Arafat, the PLO, to negotiate a two-state solution, starting with the Palestinian Declaration of November 15, 1988, where the Palestinians officially accepted a two-state solution. It's in there, you can read it. It was my idea. Was their legal advisor on this whole project. I was also at the Palestinian delegation for the Middle East peace negotiations, 1991 to 1993. But in my experience, going back to November 15th, 1988, the Palestinian Declaration of Independence, accepting officially the two-state solution on behalf of the Chairman Arafat, the PLO, the Palestine National Council, there has not been one iota of good faith demonstrated by Israel or American Zionists when it comes to the negotiation of a two-state solution. Not one iota. And that, they could have accepted, Israel could have accepted a two-state solution as far back as December 1988. They refused. They have consistently refused. The Zionists want all of Palestine and with as few Palestinians as possible. That is their objective. That is their ultimate objective. That is what Netanyahu is going to be pursuing now in the coming weeks, unless we here in the United States stop them. It's that simple. And it could set off a total catastrophe. Certainly the destabilization there, Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan, and as usual, the United States will be there in up to our necks in death and destruction.
Been this excited ever! Oh, yeah, Mug Club, baby! Wow!
The replatforming begins now. Join Mug Club and get 1 month free with promo code ALEX at jonescrowder.com.
Joining me now on the Alex Jones Show is Dr. Francis Boyle, and I've got his incredible resume right here in front of me, but I don't even want to waste this precious time with Dr. Boyle. I would just say this: it was back in January and February of 2020 where I had the privilege of interviewing Dr. Boyle, and he said, yeah, this virus came out of a Wuhan lab, and of course he's been completely proven right. So his knowledge, wisdom, and expertise is very valued here on the Alex Jones Show. Dr. Francis Boyle, now, you are very geopolitically informed. This issue between Israel and Palestinians and the whole Middle East goes back for hundreds of years. When you see the latest developments in the last 4 days, and here's your book that you wrote in 2009, Palestine, Palestinians, and International Law. With your geopolitical knowledge, what has been your reaction to what we've seen in the last 4 days, Dr. Francis Boyle?
Well, Owen, thank you very much for having me on. I'm my best to the InfoWars audience. Well, I think those of us who follow the situation knew that another intifada was coming along, given all the depredations that the Israelis have inflicted on the Palestinians, especially at Holy Al-Aqsa Mosque. You recall this is called the Al-Aqsa Flood, where you have these fanatical Jewish fundamentalists storming Al-Aqsa, the third holiest site in Islam, some would say the second, and basically trying to destroy Al-Aqsa and build their so-called temple. So it was only a question of time before something happened, and this happened. Now, I did want to make one point that is very important. everyone is calling Hamas a terrorist organization. And that's typical not only of Israel, but also the United States. Anyone who opposes what they're doing is automatically a terrorist. But Hamas clearly qualifies as a national liberation movement, not a terrorist organization, as defined by the additional Protocol 1 to the 4 Geneva Conventions of 1949 that says, and let me repeat, it's an armed conflict in which peoples are fighting against colonial domination and alien occupation and against racist regimes in the exercise of their right of self-determination. Now, the International Court of Justice has already ruled that the Palestinians have a right of self-determination. That's in the Wall advisory opinion that Israel has grievously violated. And certainly Hamas is fighting against, quote, colonial domination and alien occupation and against a racist regime. So this is pure propaganda that Hamas is nothing more than a terrorist organization. You know, they said the same thing about the PLO. And, eventually they began to negotiate with the PLO at the Middle East peace negotiations in 1991, where I served as legal advisor to the Palestinian delegation. So I don't think we should let this term terrorist define what Hamas did here. They are a national liberation movement. That's the way we have to define the events of the past few days.
Well, then I have to go with what detractors to your comments would say. How would you then define the actions by Hamas over the weekend?
Well, they're struggling under international law. They have a right to use force against these Zionist military occupation regime that has been imposed on the entire mandate for Palestine, as they see it.
But wouldn't it be fair to argue that going into a concert or killing innocent people is not going after the oppressors? Or in their eyes, do they view that as anybody in Israel is the oppressor?
Well, and we've been through this before with the Algerian War for Independence, where the FLN, the National Liberation Front, took the position that the French pieds noirs, the colons who had immigrated from France to Algeria, were legitimate targets of attack because they were part of the imperial colonial racist regime. And so, regretfully, they did attack civilians. You could see that movie, The Battle of Algiers, that presents their position quite well. So I'm not speaking here for Hamas, but as they see it, all of Palestine, the mandate for Palestine, is occupied by this brutal, racist, genocidal, Zionist regime. And everyone there is part of it. They're like the pieds noirs in Algeria before Algeria's independence.
Now, why? Because you bring up the Geneva Convention and some of this international law and some of the standard definitions when you're applying it to this situation. Why has the international community either been torn or really rather silent on what's been going on?
Well, let me point out, Owen, that Israel officially denies that the Geneva Conventions apply to protect Palestine and the Palestinians. That they deny it, and they paid no attention at all to it. And so, unfortunately, the United States government, Europe, pretty much go along with it. That's, as we saw just during the past few days, the United States and all of Europe mobilized to the to the support of Israel, and branded Hamas terrorists, even though they clearly qualify as the National Liberation Movement.
Well, would it be fair to say that the Geneva Convention then is essentially a dead duck?
It's a dead duck as far as Israel sees it, yes, and the Israeli military, they couldn't care less. You see right now 1,400 bombing attacks on Gaza, where 2 million people live, a shoot-to-kill policy against Palestinians on the West Bank, desecration of the Haram al-Sharif. They don't care. The Palestinians care, and there are other countries in the world that might care. But since the United States government doesn't care, there's very little they can do. And the U.S. government, I remember going into the embassy in Tel Aviv at that time, having spent 2 weeks traveling all up and down occupied Palestine, and say, well, they're committing violations of the Geneva Conventions here. And I was told by the consular official there, said, well, this is an internal matter for Israel. I said, not at all. We're a party to the Geneva Conventions. We have an obligation to respect and to ensure respect by Israel of the Geneva Conventions. And the consular official said to me, well, you'll have to take that up with the State Department. It's ridiculous. We arm them, equip them, supply them, train them to engage in gross and consistent patterns of violations of the Geneva Convention, tantamount to crimes against humanity and outright genocide against the Palestinians. And you saw the statement just released by the Secretary of Defense. We're sending weapons over there now as we speak.
That's Dr. Francis Boyle. We take a short break. We'll pick this conversation right back up where we left it.
Why do you think the globalists are desperately trying to censor everybody? Why are they attacking myself and Donald Trump and Elon Musk and everybody else? Because they can't get through this giant megalomaniacal power grab if we're here exposing them. But we're not just exposing their operation. In my new book, we give you the solutions to build a new, better world, an alternative to Klaus Schwab's "you will eat the bugs." This is the Great Awakening, the plan to defeat the globalist and launch the second great renaissance. It's a companion to my last book that was a #1 worldwide bestseller. And this book is even thicker and even more powerful. Get your copy of The Great Awakening today at InfoWarsStore.com, either signed as a fundraiser, and I thank you for the support, or unsigned. But whatever you do, take action now. We're fighting for you, but we can't keep on if you don't support us. So please, get the historic book now. Go now to InfoWarsStore.com and get The Great Awakening. The Great Awakening at InfoWars Store.
I've been shadow banned. I've been called a liar. I've been silenced on virtually every platform created by man. My life has been threatened repeatedly. They've tried to destroy me, but I've survived. And that's why I'm joining Mug Club.
The replatforming begins now. Join Mug Club and get 1 month free with promo code ALEX at jonescrowder.com.
Honored to be joined by Dr. Francis Boyle today, and his geopolitical expertise is much appreciated. And I want to kind of clarify something I said in the last segment and then let Dr. Boyle finish his statements, because again, you're just getting into, really, it's more just legalese talk. It's international law when it comes to war and war crimes that you are citing here. And it's funny because I don't really see that anywhere else, Dr. Boyle. It seems to be you. I know you're not the only man with that knowledge, but you seem to be the only one presenting it to the public. And of course, it's right here on InfoWars. But just to clarify what I said in the last segment, most of the international community is standing with Israel. I mean, we see that not just in America. California lights up its capital in white and blue, and you have Australia, and you have all these other in Europe, and all these countries supporting Israel. They're all in for Israel. But yet, what you're referring to here is what the international law is when it comes to war. and the Geneva Convention. And so the only statement I've ever seen anywhere near to what you're talking about, it did come from the UN. Not many people heard it, but there was a statement at the UN basically condemning Israel for what they've done to Palestine. But outside of that, why do you suppose nobody's talking about what you're talking about? And why do you think it, I mean, it appears, I would say, most of the international community is fully in support of what Israel is doing here?
Well, first of all, it's not most of the international community. You have 2 billion Muslims that oppose what's going on here. And you have 58 members of the Islamic Conference Organization that oppose what's going on here. But yes, the Western news media, except for InfoWars, is under Zionist control, domination, funding, executives, pundits, experts. Just watch it. ABC, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, BBC. It's all being told from the Zionist perspective. So, of course, you don't hear any of the considerations I'm talking about here today, because the international law is all against is against Israel. Again, that was decided by the International Court of Justice in their advisory opinion on Israel's wall. And let me repeat, here's a review of my book. Quote, the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice on the Israeli wall, published in July, could almost stand alone as a review of Professor Francis Boyle's book. The World Court judges comprehensively confirm and validate his work in elaborating the case for the Palestinians in international law. That is correct. I've been arguing for the Palestinians since I entered Harvard in 1971 as an ardent Palestinian supporter. That's why I don't teach at Harvard. But the Western news media is just not going to report all this. It's Zionist controlled, dominated. It's that simple.
I don't know how much more you want to lean into that, but I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a wild phenomenon that happens here at InfoWars, and it's not that I want to get any fuel to these wild-eyed, deranged people, but it's funny because and I know this is happening today. I can just hear it. I can just hear it telepathically. The people that are tuned in, that are fully in support of Israel, and they buy into this, that Hamas is obviously the only problem here, and I'm just trying to remain neutral, at least for the sake of this interview. And I can hear them. Hamas are the terrorists. They beheaded babies. They raped women in the streets. They dragged them. They're the bad guys. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you condemning this? And I can hear that. But it's funny because at the same time, there are people who are completely convinced that InfoWars or Alex Jones or myself is somehow in the Zionist-controlled media. And so it's this wacko thing where if you actually try to be neutral, and you actually try to just deliver the reality of the situation, all these wild-eyed conspiracies arise. So I'm glad that you mentioned that today, because it's something that sticks in my crawl here, where it's like you get accused of being X, and then somebody else accuses you of being Y, and really you're neither. You're just neutral in this situation. But I don't know if you want to lean into that further, because I do think this is a heavy topic. Why is it that so many people, even people that didn't fall for the whole war in Ukraine being supported 24/7, immediately they're all in to support Israel?
Zionist brainwashing in the news media and in higher education. I spent 7 years at Harvard. I have 3 degrees from Harvard. I spent 2 years teaching there at Harvard. Everything on the Middle East is taught from a Zionist perspective. It's that simple. And it's true at the other Ivy Leagues as well, elite educational institutions. I mean, look, I was as pro-Israel as anyone else until the 1967 war. I had been brainwashed to support Israel. But when the 1967 war came, just looking at it objectively, as you're calling for here, Israel struck first. It was acts of serial aggression around to the Arab states. They ethnically cleansed the inhabitants out of the West Bank, out of Gaza, out of the Golan Heights, and stole this land. So I concluded that everything I had been told about Israel was a total lie, and I better study it. So I went to college, and starting in 1969, I began studying it. So, but you know, the whole milieu here in the United States is pretty much Zionist controlled and dominated. That's been my experience since 1967.
By the way, I have seen from Orthodox Jews, you don't see this in the media, and of course, nobody wants to promote this, but I have seen many Orthodox Jews that, I mean, even in response to these recent attacks, many Orthodox Jews saying that they decry Zionism and they even decry the state of Israel. You don't ever hear from that. I would ask you this. We got 60 seconds till the break, and we'll pick it up on the other side. Do you think, and I don't want to hearken too much to 9/11 here, but I mean, sure, could the U.S. have allowed 9/11 to happen to start a further war? Do you think Israeli intelligence could have allowed this attack over the weekend to launch a further war?
There are two theories here, Owen. One, you are correct. This could have been that Israeli intelligence and Netanyahu knew what was going to happen and let it happen because he was domestically in a desperate situation over there. And this now allows him to appear a warlord. The second interpretation, however, is this is very similar to what happened in 1973 with the Yom Kippur War. The Israeli officials treat Palestinians as if they're children. I've been there myself. I've seen it. It's disgusting. That, oh, we're the great Zionist Übermensch, and you're the little bitty Palestinian Untermensch, and you need to do just what we tell you to do.
All right, Dr. Francis Boyle, hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Where were you when humanity was fighting for its life? Where were you when the globalists were caught trafficking millions of children for sex slavery worldwide? Where were you when the New World Order was starting World War III with Russia? Well, I know where you are. You're watching and listening to Infowars.com right now, and I salute you and thank you. And I want to encourage all of you who've been in this fight so long to realize we've reached the critical juncture in the battle now. And a key tool in that fight is the Great Awakening, defeating the globalists and launching the next great renaissance. This is my second book, part 2 of the Great Reset in the War for the World. It's a longer book, a quite frankly more powerful book. And just like the last book went to #1, it is up to you to send us to #1 right now. This is a cultural fight against the globalists, and it funds the InfoWar. Get signed or unsigned copies of The Great Awakening right now at InfoWarsStore.com. I want to thank you all for your support. This is a book everybody needs. Get your copy of The Great Awakening right now.
Having a conversation here with Dr. Francis Boyle, and I want to pick it up where we left off. Let me frame it back up for you here, Dr. Boyle. Would the U.S. have allowed Pearl Harbor to happen to get involved in a larger war? Would the U.S. have allowed 9/11 to happen to get involved in a larger war? Would Israel have allowed the attacks over the weekend to happen to further their incursion on the Gaza Strip? And I guess I would maybe even want you, if you would, to start with this. I mean, there's no debate that the state of Israel has one of the most secure airspaces, if not the most secure airspace in the world, as well as one of the most advanced and penetrating intelligence networks in the world. And we see men flying in with parachutes and rifles, killing people at a music festival. I mean, do you believe that that could have happened organically? Do you think there was a legitimate intelligence failure? Or again, could they have let it happen? Dr. Francis Boyle.
Well, you're right. President Roosevelt knew full well that there was going to be an attack at Pearl Harbor, and he let it happen because he wanted in on the Second World War. 9/11, I think all the evidence shows that the United States government knew it was happening, and the Bush administration wanted it to happen and let it happen. So yes, I'm not ruling out that Netanyahu knew full well that this was going to happen, and he let it happen because of his own internal predicament that he had there in Israel.
Now, here's an interesting one, because my crew is always out there looking at stories and angles as well. Very important crew that we have here. And there's another angle I want to bring up that they brought to my attention. But here's an interesting one. Remember last week, they had that giant emergency alert system test. Well, apparently that's being used now in Israel. And Israel is using the emergency alert system to tell everybody in Gaza to flee, as they basically are turning it into a parking lot. But they're saying, is this maybe evidence that they knew it was coming, but they did the test here to make sure the system works so that they could use it in Gaza? I don't know if you want to comment on that or pick up where you left off talking about kind of the cultural aspects of Israel and the Palestinians and how they kind of look down upon them, or as you, I would say, described it earlier, as being racist.
Right. Well, as for the first point, I really don't know, except there's nowhere for the 2 million people in Gaza to go.
Yeah.
Israel knows it. And as you said, they're going to turn Gaza into a parking lot. They'll kill tens of thousands if they have to simply exterminate them. But as for the second point, right, I've spent many years working with the Palestinians, and whenever they are there in the company of Israelis, I'm oftentimes there, they treat them like children. It's outright racist mentality. I would say, again, we are the Zionist Übermensch, and you are the Palestinian Untermensch, and you should just do what we tell you to do and be glad to do it. So they've grossly underestimated the Palestinians. I've worked with them. They're very bright, intelligent, hardworking people, extremely well educated. So that also could be a factor here, because we don't want to deny Palestinian agency what happened here.
Let me ask you this then, because I hear this notion brandied about all the time too, which is, well, the Palestinians have been given the opportunity. They've been given the Gaza Strip. They could have turned it into a Tel Aviv. That was the argument. They'll turn it into a Tel Aviv. They'll turn it into a Miami. And they didn't. What's your response to that?
Well, it was Hamas that drove the Zionists out of Gaza Strip in 2005. That's what qualifies them as a national liberation movement. And then starting in 2007, Israel, after Hamas won a free, fair election over there, which, by the way, was supported by President Bush Jr. and Condoleezza Rice, Israel imposed a genocidal economic embargo upon them to prevent them from engaging in economic development. So, Israel has only itself to blame for the deplorable circumstances in Gaza that motivated Hamas to undertake this act of national liberation as they saw it.
If I may respond here, not to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong. So essentially you're saying Israel and the powers that be never allowed the Gaza Strip to be turned into a new Tel Aviv.
No, and indeed, I've been over there. The Palestinians are extremely talented, industrious, hardworking, and intelligent. If given a fair, reasonable chance, they would have done it, but they've never been given that chance. No. Now,
it's hard for me to tell what's real, what's not, what's propaganda, what's not, and I like to tread lightly on these things. And so I'd like to get your analysis on this, but it would appear that all the official numbers, and these date back really decades, but even if you look at modern history, all the numbers in this struggle between Israel and Palestine, the Palestinians have suffered death at a tenfold rate compared to Israel. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Even worse than that, if you go back to the Nakba in 1948, which what I originally studied at the University of Chicago in 1969 in great length at my course on Middle East politics there, far superior to anything they dish out at Harvard, and went through all the literature. Right, Israel just engaged in massive ethnic cleansing of 500,000 Palestinians, driven into exile around the world, driven into Gaza, driven into the West Bank, to refugee camps, and then again, happening again, the Nakba in 1967. So, if you tote the casualties up, the Zionist casualties have been minimal compared to what the Palestinians have suffered, right?
Now, this is a little bit more of a wonky question, and maybe you can figure out a way to make it palatable. Why is the USA so attached at the hip to Israel? I hear this from politicians and people in media. The U.S., we need Israel. We need Israel. We couldn't exist without Israel. I mean, I scratch my head at that. I'll hold my tongue. But why is the United States so attached at the hip to Israel? Who needs who in this relationship?
Well, first of all, Israel needs us. I mean, I dealt with Shimon Peres, the former prime minister, and at one point he said, we are completely dependent on the United States. And that is correct. Without the United States, Israel would be a failed state. There's no question about that. But American Jews have gotten together. They've gotten organized. They've put together the many different lobbying groups. They've raised a lot of money. They're quite politically active. And they bribe, threaten, intimidate, and blacklist all their opponents, especially in Congress. You could read the book by my friend, the late Paul Finley here from Illinois. He used to represent Abe Lincoln's district, a Republican, called They Dare to Speak Out. If you speak out, the Zionist lobby here in the United States will slate you for destruction, as they did Congressman Finley. Also, our Senator Chuck Percy, a very fine senator, I supported him. They destroyed his career. So that's why. That's why you only hear this.
Now, I heard you say the word there, money. Money. I mean, how do the Zionists have enough money to influence American foreign policy?
Well, it's like any other lobbying group. American Jews have been very successful, so they put their money into these different lobbying groups. ADL, AIPAC, Conference of Jewish Presidents organizations, etc. And then it's not just money buying people off, but it's threatening to destroy your career and actually destroy your career if you speak out on behalf of the Palestinians or you criticize what Israel is doing. ADL and AIPAC maintain enemies lists of what they deem to be enemies of Israel. I'm on both lists. And people on that list, they'll destroy if they can. So that's just the way it goes, sure.
Yeah, and again, this gets into the wacky nature of it. Is you can get put on these ADL anti-Semite lists, and then you'll have other whack jobs out there saying that you're a Zionist shill and Zionist controlled. But I guess so. It's kind of like the whole just point your finger and call your enemy a racist, and then that destroys them in the court of public opinion. So is it really that simple? They can have these groups like the ADL. They just label you an anti-Semite, and then any dissent is squashed.
Well, it's not just labeling you an anti-Semite. They're labeling you an enemy of Israel. They go after Jews too. who speak out and criticize it. I had several Jewish friends who have criticized Israel. They destroyed their careers. They've asked me to assist them. I've tried, but that's just the way they work. So it's not a question of anti-Semite. Sure, they'll blame you with being an anti-Semite. I've been, Zionists have accused me of everything but being a child molester for my support for the Palestinians. But they'll go after Jews too. Indeed, they'll treat Jews worse than the rest of us. They treat Jews who criticize Israel as traitors. What can I say? You have my friend Professor Norman Finkelstein there at DePaul Law School, who wrote a book exposing Alan Dershowitz as a plagiarist, and they destroyed his career there at DePaul. And DePaul is supposed to be Catholic, and they let Dershowitz, the other Zionists, get away with destroying his career, and he's been blacklisted. He can't get hired anywhere, despite his outstanding academic qualifications, PhD from Princeton, whatever. That's the way they work.
Now, how accurate? I want to get back into that in a second, but the crew just put an image up on the screen, and I've kind of always felt this way, and maybe this is a mundane explanation, but it's got the rockets going up from, or going into Israel, and then it's got the Iron Dome rockets going up to blow up those rockets, and it's U.S. taxpayer dollars on each side. Now, I think there's an element of truth to that. I don't know if that's, directly a perfect visual of how this goes. But to me, it feels like this is a lot of the same. It's the same weapons manufacturers. It's the same groups funding both sides. How accurate to you, Dr. Boyle, is that image that we had on the screen?
Well, we have to understand, Hamas doesn't really have rockets like Israel. They give Israel advanced, sophisticated munitions, precision-guided weapons. I mean, the Hamas shooting there, they're, for the most part, sort of high-grade fireworks is what they are. They're more for public relations purposes than really, killing people. Whereas what Israel is doing, is just wiping people out.
Well, now people are saying, let me just interject, because people are saying that used to be the case, but it appears that Hamas has a lot more firepower now.
They do. I'm not exactly sure where they got it, but it does appear they have more firepower at this point. Yes, because they need it for self-defense as they see it. Right. The Zionists are out to destroy them and kill as many Palestinians as possible. We have to fear another Nakba from what Netanyahu has been saying here. It looks like they, if they could get away with it, they'd like to drive the entire 2 million population of Gaza into Egypt, into the Sinai. That could happen. Again, they've mobilized over 300,000 troops to go into Gaza. So we're going to see, a massive human tragedy here.
Yeah, that when I saw the rhetoric from Netanyahu, I was afraid of the worst. And even though they've been bombing Gaza for, I guess, almost 24 hours now, they're saying this is just the beginning. The land invasion is next. What that will look like, I guess, only time will tell. I want to go back to what you were mentioning. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me make a point there, though. The Biden administration has only exacerbated this situation by saying we are going to give blank check support to everything Israel is going to do to the Palestinians. They know full well there's going to be massive genocide in Gaza. And instead of the Biden administration saying, stop, now let's have a ceasefire on both sides, they have encouraged, they are arming, equipping, and supplying what is going to be a massive tragedy here in Gaza that could very well spill out of control. We already have shooting there by Hezbollah into the border area. If Hezbollah gets involved, as they did in 2006, there'll be massive death and destruction on both sides. Remember, in 2006, Israel did invade Gaza. Hamas fought back. Over 1,000 Palestinians were massacred. And at that point, Hezbollah entered the war. And, Hezbollah is very well armed compared to the Palestinians. They don't have just these advanced firecrackers. They've got rockets.
And to me at that point, correct me if I'm wrong, but to me at that point, it's basically Iran getting involved, and now we're one inch away from World War III.
Well, I would not say Iran. We have to be careful here, Owen, because the diehard neocon Zionists here in the United States are trying to use this as a pretext to attack Iran. Now, as of yesterday, both Blinken and Kirby have said they've seen no evidence that Iran is involved. But there is going to be enormous pressure for us and Israel to attack Iran. Things could get out of control. You're right. There are Iranian forces in Syria. They're at the request of the Syrian government, what makes it legal under international law. And Syria could get involved. Hezbollah could get involved. Egypt could get involved. Jordan, we have to understand how unstable Jordan is. The Hashemite family, the British put them in power, took them up from Saudi Arabia and put them in power. And then we took over, and the CIA keeps the Hashemite family there in power. Half their population is Palestinian. So this area itself could blow up. And indeed, I'm afraid that is why the Biden administration sent off this aircraft carrier strike force under the Ford, because they know what Israel is planning to do, and they know that will produce a terrible adverse reaction, certainly in the surrounding Arab states.
You bring up the CIA. I was going to go in the direction of Mossad, talk about Israel controlling our foreign policy. Is that Mossad? Is that blackmail? Is that the Jeffrey Epstein types? Because I think there's an element of that at play here, certainly, with what we saw with Epstein being a spy and Epstein Island and the Lolita Express.
That's correct. I mean, it's well known Epstein was a front man for Mossad, and he was running a blackmailing operation there, the Lolita Express at Orgy Island. And he had a lot of U.S. leaders, they have a list of them there in Newsweek, who were down there at Orgy Island, probably found in compromising positions with girls, and films were taken. So yes, blackmail is part of it. Yes.
All right, I don't want to take you out of your league here, but I think you're probably in all the leagues. Now, this was brought to me by the crew, and it's funny. The only reason I'm aware of this is there is some biblical stuff on this, but it was also this kind of cultural thing was featured in a Russian film I watched that I liked called Branded, and that's the red heifer phenomenon. Are you familiar with the red heifer and what that means to Israel, and specifically the Al-Aqsa Mosque that you mentioned earlier?
Yes, there are these fanatical religious fundamentalist Jews who want to destroy Al-Aqsa and build their so-called third temple. Well, the second temple goes back to 70 AD, I mean, destroyed by the Romans. That, if they do this, and they've tried to do this, and indeed, if you're following the press accounts, now you have thousands of these fanatical Jewish fundamentalists storming Haram al-Sharif, which is the plateau there, and Al-Aqsa, threatening Al-Aqsa, threatening to destroy Al-Aqsa. That would be a conflagration if they were to do this, yes.
So I just want to read this out so that the audience that might say, red heifer, what are you talking about? Here's just all these headlines that we haven't compiled here on the desk. The Red Heifer Project, Israeli government part of plan to build third temple at Al-Aqsa. That was the holy ground of the Muslims that you were mentioning earlier. First red heifer born in 2,000 years sparks fears of biblical end of days. Prophecy fulfilled after red cow is born at Temple of Israel. Jewish leaders in Israel needed a red heifer for temple ceremony, so Texas sent them 5. We were doing this. Red heifer sacrifice could take place in 1 year in Jerusalem. Biblical red heifer could bring millions of visitors to Samaria. The red heifer in the third temple, end of times prophecy. Does a heifer herald bring the beginning of the third temple? And from Texas, Israel, red heifers needed for temple arrival. And so I'm glad we had the time to bring this up. I'm not surprised that you had the knowledge to comment on that as well. Last 2 minutes here with Dr. Francis Boyle. How would you like to make your closing statements here?
Yes, Owen, thank you for giving me this time. I have tried since 1987, working with the highest level officials of the Palestinian movement, including Chairman Yasser Arafat, the PLO, to negotiate a two-state solution, starting with the Palestinian Declaration of November 15, 1988, where the Palestinians officially accepted a two-state solution. It's in there, you can read it. It was my idea. I was their legal advisor on this whole project. I was also at the Palestinian delegation for the Middle East peace negotiations, 1991 to 1993. But in my experience, going back to November 15th, 1988, the Palestinian Declaration of Independence accepting officially the two-state solution on behalf of the Chairman Arafat, the PLO, the Palestine National Council, there has not been one iota of good faith demonstrated by Israel or American Zionists when it comes to the negotiation of a two-state solution. Not one iota. And that, they could have accepted, Israel could have accepted a two-state solution as far back as December 1988. They refused, they have consistently refused. The Zionists want all of Palestine and with as few Palestinians as possible. That is their objective. That is their ultimate objective. That is what Netanyahu is going to be pursuing now in the coming weeks, unless we here in the United States stop them. It's that simple. And it could set off a total catastrophe. Certainly the destabilization there, Lebanon, Egypt, Jordan, and as usual, the United States will be there in up to our necks in death and destruction.
Dr. Francis Boyle, thank you for your time, your knowledge, your wisdom, and your expertise here on the Alex Jones Show.
Well, again, thank you, Owen, for having me on. My best to everyone there.
Everything in this universe is about action. Good actions and bad actions, or actions that are indifferent and really don't matter. Everything is about the will and the decision you make. Ladies and gentlemen, when you get these great products, you don't just fund our operation, you get incredible products. And it's been several years since we've had all 3 of these formerly best-selling products at one time together. DNA Force Plus, the Real Red Pill Plus, and Body's Ultimate Turmeric Formula all go together and do incredible things for your body, and all 3 are finally back in stock. Now you can get them all individually, DNA Force Plus, Body's Ultimate Turmeric Formula, Real Red Pill Plus, for 25% off, and they're the best you're gonna find. But you can get all 3 together for a limited time, because we're already close to selling out of Body's in about a week, to get 40% off on these products. You owe it to yourself to find out about what's in DNA Force Plus, the Real Red Pill Plus, or Body's Ultimate Turmeric Formula. You owe it to yourself to learn about these compounds and how they're the missing links. They all do incredible things, but together, synergistically, they are the trifecta. DNA Force Plus, Real Red Pill Plus, Body's Ultimate Turmeric Formula, now back in stock together, 40% off. We've not run a special on these in years with all 3 together, and it funds the operation. But you need to experience for yourself what Real Red Pill Plus, what DNA Force Plus, and Body's Ultimate Turmeric Formula will do for you and your family. Whether you're old or young, they're all incredible. But old folks definitely feel this because on average, you've got more of the deficiencies. These are incredible products. Real Red Pill, it's all back. Get yours now. Support the broadcast. InfoWars Store.